Hi folks, it's Peter back with another video. It's been about a week or so since I did my last one, but as I mentioned last time, last weekend was the Kendal Record Fair, which I like to try and get to, and as usual I bought a ton of stuff there. But there's also a load of other stuff to show, so I think this is going to have to be a two-parter, I'm sorry, otherwise the video is going to get far too long, as mine usually are, I'm afraid. Right, but before I show anything, I'd like to give a shout out to a particular channel that I've been watching the last few weeks, and that's one by Robert, whose channel goes under the name of Sounds Strange. Robert's an Irishman originally from Dublin, now resides in Spain, and he shows some really interesting stuff, which he talks about with great passion and intelligence. One of his loves is classical music. He's done a great series of videos, each dedicated to a different post-war composer, which are really interesting. And his videos have had me revisiting my very small classical collection and looking out for more stuff, which leads me on to the first item. Now, record fairs aren't usually places where you see classical music, but this time at Kendal there was a new seller who had a small, about a dozen classical albums, and I saw this first album and it looked interesting. Had a quick look up on my phone about the composer, and I thought this could be interesting, so I decided to take a risk, and that's this album. It's called Astrological Series and it's by Roberto Gerhardt. Now, Roberto Gerhardt was a Catalonian composer. He was, I think, a student of Schoenberg's. He was a serialist. He had to leave Spain, I think, in 1939, I think, due to the rise of fascism in Spain, and eventually ended up in the UK, in Cambridge, I think, where he did a lot of work for the BBC, and he also did some electronic works. One of the first, I think, his score for a production of King Lear, I think, was the first such electronic score in the British theatre. But this album comprises of 3 works from the 1960s. Show me that. That's the guy. Now, the first is Gemini from 1966 for violin and piano. The second, I just got to say that piece also has guitar in it, played by the great guitarist John Williams. More about him later. The second piece is from 1968. It's called Libra, and that's for flute, clarinet, violin, guitar, percussion and piano. And the whole of the second side is taken up with the composition Leo, which is for flute, clarinet, horn, trumpet, trombone, tuba, percussion, piano, violin and cello. And that was the final piece I think they ever wrote. Like I said, that was 1969. He died in 1970. I was really impressed with this. I really enjoyed it, particularly Leo, the side-long piece. I wish I had the vocabulary to describe it properly. Maybe Robert would do one of his post-war composer videos on Gerhardt. I'd be interested to find out more about him, and I'd love to hear some of the electronic pieces that he did. But I'm really pleased I picked that up. I think it was very cheap because it's the covers had to be repaired with sellotape at one point, but excellent. Down here, the guy also had this box set, the early David Munro, the early music consort of London, with instruments of the Middle Ages and Renaissance. I've always liked medieval and early music, so when I saw this, again going for hardly anything, I thought I'd try it out. You get a booklet describing every piece of music on the albums. It also comes with a really good, I think it's a 98-page booklet describing the instruments, which is going to take some reading. I haven't had a chance to listen to this yet, but it's a 2-disc set, and it's on the EMI Angel series. Like I say, I've always loved early music, so I think I'm going to enjoy this. There's going to be some interesting reading as well. Pleased to have found that. Also, in the classical vein, I picked up this is on Discogs, Music for Percussion Volume 1, the Tristan Fry Percussion Ensemble, conducted by John Elliott Gardner. Now, Tristan Fry will be better known to a lot of us as the drummer with the prog rock band Sky, who John Williams was the guitarist with. But I didn't know he'd done some classical pieces. This is just a single record, comes in a nice box though, with a really nice booklet. The 3 pieces are, bear with me, Toccata for Percussion Instruments by Carlos Chavez, who is a Mexican composer. Then 2 pieces by Alan Hovhannes, if I've said that rightly, an American composer. That's Bacchanal and October Mountain for Percussion Sextet, and it finishes off with Symphony for Percussion by Jose Cerebria, who is Uruguayan. I love percussion, with the exception of steel drums for some reason. So I really love this album. It's on the Gale label, who I think released about half a dozen classical albums, which you can actually get in a box set. Now, the weird thing about this one is it comes with a Gale record warranty, which you can send away to Audio-Technica US to get a warranty that covers the replacement of the disc. I've never seen that. I mean, half the booklet is taken up with the process of recording and mastering the album, and I've got to say, it does sound excellent. So I'd highly recommend these recordings. Like I said, there's only half a dozen on this label. This is the only one that probably interests me at the moment, but I would highly recommend this. And I'll have to check out if Tristan Fry has done any other albums of a similar nature. Good stuff. Right, all the rest I'm going to show are back to folk. I've been really on a folk kick at the moment. first one, if you saw my vinyl tag for 2019 video, when the question that asked about a person of great influence, I chose Ashley Hutchins, the founder of Fairport Convention, Steel Eye Span and the Albion Band. And this is, I was going to say a solo album, it's actually credited to Ashley Hutchins and John Kirkpatrick, the great accordion player, who was also, I think, might have appeared on some of the Albion ones, I'm not sure, but he was Richard Thompson's collaborator for a long while, and actually was in Steel Eye Span at a different time from Ashley Hutchins. And I think his son now is in Steel Eye. And this is the Complete Dancing Master. It's on the Island's budget label Help. And this is great stuff. If you've ever heard his Morrison and Son of Morrison albums, which albums of dance tunes, this is very much in that vein, but between each piece there is a reading of a passage from literature, from writers like Shakespeare, Hardy, Dickens, all to do with dance. And it's a really great listen. You get the usual suspects on here backing up Kirkpatrick and Hutchins. You get Simon Nicol and Roger Swallow, Dave Mattox, Sue Harris, all people who have played with him in various bands. I would highly recommend this album. Excellent stuff. I think this was from, I think it's 1972, something like that. But well worth having. Next up is an English folk singer-songwriter of, well, started out in I think the 70s, and this is Harvey Andrews, and this is his second album, Writer of Songs. This originally came out in 1972 on the Cube Records label, but this is a reissue from I think 1985 on Beeswing. This is excellent stuff. This, you know, you could say it's typical singer-songwriter of that period. A lot of songs that are quite political in nature, sociological themes, but he's got a great voice. He's a good songwriter, and the other musicians on here are incredible. You've got the Fairport rhythm section of Dave Mattox and Dave Pegg. You've got Ralph McTell. You've got Danny Thompson from Pentangle. You've got Cozy Powell on one track. Rick Wakeman plays piano on a couple, and you even get Roy Babington, the Soft Machine bassist, plays on it. Really worth having. He deserves to be better known, does Harvey. I think he's retired now, but I saw him a couple of times live in the late 90s in a folk club, and he was excellent. In fact, I'll show you something. This is a 3 CD set, Back on the Road Again, of which there are only 2 copies in existence, and I should know that because I did this. Half of it's taken from a gig at the Waterside Ramsbottom, 22nd of October 1989, which was provided to me by my friend Roger. He had the recording on tape. And the other half is from the West Horton Folk Club, 19th February 1999, which I recorded myself, naughty boy. But it's got some good stuff on here. It's got one of my favourite songs of his, I'd Rather Read a Book, about a guy who doesn't conform to the way everybody else thinks he should act going out. and partying and everything. And his refrain is, I'd rather read a book. Story of my life. But highly recommend Harvey Andrews. He's a really good singer-songwriter. Next up, we've got, oh, this is one I was really pleased to buy, to find. It's High Sands and the Liquid Lake by the Scottish band New Celeste. I remember this from the late 70s when I was at university. I think my friend Chris must have had a copy or had it on tape. I think he did me a tape of it. Don't know where it's gone. I've never seen it since. I've got the second album, but this I've never seen since then. I remember it's a really good folk rock record. There are a 4-piece. This was only ever released in Holland and France. I think this was, can't remember what year. This is 1977 it might have been. That rings a bell. But this one is the French pressing on the Arflo folk record. I like that label. Like I say, excellent folk rock with great vocals by Ian Fergus. I think they only did 4 albums, one of which is a live album. That's the only one I'm missing. The 4th one was only on CD. But I never thought I'd see this, so I was really pleased to find it. Highly recommended. Next, another follow-up from one I showed the other week, and that's another album by the great Breton harpist Alan Stivell, Il Inconnu. Now this is typical Stivell, great vocals, great playing, and the great, Dan Arbra features on here, but unfortunately only on acoustic guitar, because there are no electric instruments on this one unusually for Stivell. This is purely acoustic. This is a French pressing from 1974 on the Fontana label. And it's superb stuff. It's all material from Brittany, a couple of Welsh songs, a couple of Scottish songs, a couple of Irish songs, and even a tune from the Isle of Man. Superb. And another one, follow-up to one I got earlier. I managed to find the second Bothy Band album, Old Hag You Have Killed Me. Now to me, the Bothy Band are superb musicians. They're up there with Planxty as probably the best Ireland produced at this point, I think. This is like I say, their second album, considered probably their best, but I don't think there's much between the first 2. At this point, they'd swapped one great fiddler, was Tommy Peoples, for Kevin Burke on this album, but carries on with the first album left off. Excellent stuff. Next, and I can't believe I've got to the grand old age of 60 and never, with a love of folk music, and never had an album by this band in any format whatsoever. And that's the Chieftains, another band out of Ireland, probably the most famous folk band that ever came out of Ireland, I would imagine, arguably. I don't know why I've never bought an album of theirs. I think being a shallow youth at the time when I was getting into folk, I liked folk with electric instruments backing it, and this is more traditional. Also, I think their image made them look far older and staid than they actually are. The playing is absolutely great. I'll be looking out for more Chieftains. You can get them for virtually nothing. All the early albums are quite cheap to buy. They actually even did an album with Van Morrison, which could be interesting to have. Well worth having. And the last two are by the same band. Again, we're staying in Ireland. And this, oops, the wrong one. I'll show them in the right order. This is the Irish band Clannad. This is their fourth studio album, Clanul, which I think is from 1980. This is before they went into that sort of ethereal and that pop rock vein later and got more famous. This is a period I much prefer the early stuff. This actually is the first album which had playing on it and on keyboards and backing vocals, Enya, who was Moya Brennan's younger sister, but she's not credited on the album. This is an excellent album. Moya Brennan's vocals are beautiful. And following up on that is their fifth album, probably the last one I'm interested in. And this is called, you'll have to forgive me, Fuaim. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. This one is the second one that Enya plays on, and she's actually credited. That's Enya. And this is where I think they expand their sound with Enya's keyboards, with a bit of electric guitar, saxophone, and it's a sort of a bridge between their earlier, more traditional material and the way they would go with, you know, like their soundtracks for Harry's Game and Robin Assured and all of that. But this is still a very good album. Well worth having. Like I say, it's probably the last of theirs that I'd be really interested in. I need to find the first three studio albums. I've got the live album, and there's been a recent live album from 1980. This battle, by the way, is was recorded in 1982 and was released on the Tara label. But this is a 1990 reissue on Cooking Vinyl. Well with that. Right, I've still got to 23 minutes. I don't know how I do it. I will have to do another video to show you the rock stuff that I got and other types of albums. I hope everybody's okay. I hope you found that of interest. Take care. See you soon.